Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to your maths lesson for the day with me, Mr. Fitzsimmons. To start the lesson, we need to draw a margin and put the short date and our learning objective for the day, which is to understand fractions, decimals, and percentages of a shape. Pause the video just while you're getting all of that done. First of all, I think it's good to remind ourselves of fractions, decimals, and percentages. We can recognise each of these numbers as what we call the whole. This shows us that they are all connected, as anything less than these is smaller than the whole. For example, 0.9 would be less than a whole, as would 90% or 9/10. Because we know that the whole is 100% or 10/10 or 1.0, we can see that these are less than the whole. This is how we remember that when converting fractions or percentages into decimals, the answer is always less than the whole. A really good way to understand these is by using a number line. This is really helpful when we're trying to see what is bigger out of a percentage or a decimal, or a fraction and a percentage. For example, I can see here that if I wanted to work out what was bigger out of 14/20ths, or 80%, I can easily see on the number line that 80% is bigger, and that 14/20ths is actually equal to 70%. Take a minute to pause the video and use the number line to work out what 40% is as a fraction and a decimal. So, how do we do this with shapes? First of all, I understand that by looking at the square, that it is one whole split into 4 parts. So that's the answer to my first question. We must make sure that we remember when we split up a shape into 4, it's still one whole and not 4 different shapes. So my answer to my first question is 4. For my second question, I can count that 3 out of the 4 parts are shaded blue. This then helps me with my next question. If I know that 3 out of 4 parts are shaded, that's just another way of saying 3/4. Lastly, how do I work that out as a percentage? Firstly, I know that when looking at percentages, the whole is 100%, like we spoke about earlier. So I need to divide 100 by the number of parts there are. Make sure that when we divide by the total number of parts, we're dividing by the number of parts and not just the shaded parts. So I can work out that 100 divided by 4 is 25. So I know that each part of the square is worth 25%. In order to find the percentage of the shape that is shaded, I need to multiply the number of shaded parts, which is 3, by how much they are worth, which is 25. 25 times 3, or 3/25s, is 75, and this gives me the answer that 75% of the shape is shaded. Now, try on your own with the circle, remembering that the whole is equal to 100 when we're working with percentages, and to divide that by the total number of parts that make up the whole circle, and not just the parts that are shaded, as this would be incorrect. Now, to do that again, but with more parts this time, I can count that a circle is made up of 10 parts. I can also see that 2 out of 10 parts are shaded. This gives me my fraction, which is 2 out of 10, or 2/10. Now I need to find the percentage of the circle that is shaded. I'll do the same as last time. Firstly, I can see that the total number of parts is 10, and I know that the whole, when working with percentages, is 100. So I need to divide 100 by 10, remembering that I'm dividing by the total number of parts and not just the shaded parts, which gives me 10. So I know now that each part of the circle is worth 10%. Now I have to multiply that by the number of shaded parts, giving me 20. So I know now that 20% of the shape is shaded. Finally, I need to understand how to represent these as a decimal. Firstly, I can use the percentage to help me find the decimal. In order to do this, I need to remember that the whole when talking about percentages is 100, and that the whole when talking about decimals is 1. Therefore, I know that I need to divide the percentage by 100 to get the decimal, because I already know that 1 goes into 100 100 times. An easy way to do this is to use our place value knowledge. We know that when dividing by 100, we need to move the numbers 2 places to the right. We can now see that 10% is the same as 0.10 or 0.1, so 1 part is equal to 0.1. Therefore, if there's 2 parts shaded, I just need to multiply that by 2. I can now see that 0.2 of the circle is shaded. Don't forget when you're doing this and using your place value to remove the percent symbol, as we would then be writing a percentage and not a decimal, which isn't correct. But what if we don't have the percentage? There's a really easy way I can do this, and that's by using my knowledge of place value again. If I wanted to convert the fraction into a decimal, I know my place value columns, and I know that I'm looking for 2/10. So if I put my 2 into the tenths column, like the arrow shows, and I can see that 2/10 is equal to 0.2, so I have my answer. Now I know that 2/10 is equal to 20%, which is equal to 0.2. Let's try these methods on a couple of these shapes. With question A, I can see that the square has been divided into 16 equal parts. I can also count that 8 parts are shaded. With my knowledge of number doubling, I know that 8 is half of 16, so I know I can simplify 8/16 to 1/2. If I remember that 100% is the whole, then I know that half of 100% would be 50%. I also know that the whole for a decimal is 1, so I know that half of 1 is 0.5. Therefore, I now understand that 8/16 is equal to 1/2, which is equal to 50%, which is equal to 0.5. But what about question B? Well, I can see that the square is divided into 20 equal parts this time, and I can count that 9 of those parts are shaded. So the first thing I know is that 9/20 is shaded. I know that a whole is 100% when I'm converting to percentages, and when looking at the fraction, I can see that 20 goes into 100 5 times. Therefore, if I times the numerator, which is the top number, and the denominator, which is the bottom number on a fraction, by 5, I can make this conversion much easier. I know that 5 times 9 is 45 because of my times tables, and 5 times 20 is 100, so I know that 9/20 is the same as 45 100ths. This makes it really easy for me to see that it is equal to 45%. Now, for converting this to a decimal, I know that 45% is the same as 9/20. Like we talked about earlier, I know that the whole when talking about percentages is 100, and that the whole when talking about decimals is 1. Therefore, I know I need to divide the percentage by 100 to get to the decimal. We can use place value again like we did earlier. We know that when dividing by 100, we need to move the numbers 2 places to the right. We can now see that 45% is the same as 0.45. Once again, don't forget to remove the percentage symbol when we convert the percentage to a decimal, as we'd then be writing a percentage and not a decimal, which is incorrect. So now we know that 9/20 is the same as 45 100ths, which is the same as 45% and 0.45. Now, pause the video and try drawing C, D and E on some lined paper and finding the fractions, decimals and percentages of the shaded parts yourself, using the methods we've learned today to practice for today's IP.